Abbot Lot came to Abbot Joseph and said, "Father, according as I am able, I keep my little rule and my little fast, my prayer, meditation, and contemplative silence. And according as I am able, I strive to cleanse my heart of evil thoughts. Now what more should I do?" The elder monk rose up and in reply stretched out his hands to heaven, and his fingers became like 10 lamps of fire. He said, "Why not be totally changed into fire?" These words are from Thomas Merton, who was quoting stories from the Desert Fathers. The question Abbot Joseph posed remains for us. Why don't we become totally changed into fire? This video is the fourth in a series of meditations on living the Christian life robustly. Posted up above is a link to the first in the series to get you going in the process if you're jumping into this midstream. We've previously talked about how grace builds on nature, nature being, in short, who we are, where we are, and with whom we are. That's where our journey of discipleship begins. And we name that primary beginning posture of who we are so as to stop trying to be someone we are not. We talked about who we are in terms of finding our garden spot. We noted where Jesus prayed time and again in Gethsemane. And we sought to know where our Gethsemane might be, that place where we pray, love, and live best. For example, say you are one who is most at home in nature. You love the outdoors, the seashore, the mountains, the forest, the garden. If you're this sort of nature lover, the odds are you're not going to try to be seeking the values of, say, the one who is devoted entirely to liturgy, generally speaking. We talked about values that we hold dear. We called them core values. These are values, for example, of such things as solitude or community or tranquility that we hear the Lord calling us to or that we find important in our lives. To continue with the example of the one who is most at home in nature, the place where this person is most at rest, he or she looks for core values. Perhaps it is the beauty or the community around the campfire. If it is beauty or community that you value in nature, we have to ask, what practice do you adopt? What vital behavior do you adopt that will enable you better to live out those core values? What spiritual disciplines might you do to get yourself to see and experience again and again those values you cherish, those values that bring you closer to God? What are you going to do specifically? Of course, we want to get to the point of writing all this down, because if you're anything like me, if I don't write it down, my plans, they will all disappear into the vapor of merely good intentions. Intentions that are fervently remembered for the space of a day or two. I think of my own New Year's resolutions. They are good for only a short while. And so to avoid that, we want to memorialize in some way this rule of life. There's a writer and Christian minister and preacher whom I follow a bit. He has a fine podcast and he's engaged in a ministry of teaching spiritual practices. And he has a line that speaks to the situation that is at hand here. This teacher, writer, minister is a fellow named John Mark Comer. And John Mark says, if a vine doesn't have a trellis, it will die. And if your life with Jesus doesn't have some kind of structure to facilitate health and growth, it will wither away. Following Jesus has to make it onto your schedule and into your practices, or it will simply never happen. Apprenticeship to Jesus will remain an idea, but not a reality in your life. True enough, at least for me, John Mark Comer. We want to get to a place where we can find some certainty in this life of discipleship. We want to name some practices that will sustain this journey toward discipleship. The ultimate objective is to create a rule of life. We're almost ready to set pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, almost. I hate to say it, but I think there is one more step to take before putting it all down on paper together. And that last step before writing it all down is to ask yourself two questions. One, where are you headed? And two, where are you coming from? To cut to the chase, I want to articulate my life on the basis of the acronym RIM. RIM. That stands for R, relationship, I, identity, M, mission. As a Christian, I want to be in our relationship with Jesus, not as merely an academic idea, but as a friend, a companion, a guide, a teacher, as my Lord. That's the R relationship. The more and more I enter into a relationship with anyone, including Jesus, my identity becomes more and more unified with him. Think of, for example, being married. Everything in my life has to acknowledge that it has not just been me in the world for a number of decades. Everything I do has in some way, has to ask whether being married has an impact on this particular decision. I'm a married man. That is a blessing in how I live every single day. So too, being in relationship with the Lord, being a disciple, is my identity. Now finally, the M of RIM, mission. Because of my relationship with the Lord and my identity in him, what do I do? So if the question is, where am I headed with all this talk of grace building on nature, of garden spots and core values, the answer is that I hear the Lord calling me into relationship, identity, and mission in him. Accordingly, my rule of life needs to support that. The second question after where am I headed is the question, where am I coming from? Here I am asking the question that wants to know what my life situation is, what my vocation is, what my family is, what my responsibilities are. All of these shape how my rule of life will be crafted. I have to take account of all these to script my rule of life. The way I would state my life calling, my vocation, is to say that it is to serve as a deacon, to serve God, my wife, my family, my church. In my workplace, by offering the best of what I know, by offering the joy I find in sharing whom I have come to know the Lord to be, by understanding what service is and how my life might conform to the beauty I've discovered or has been given to me by the Spirit. So here's where we are in the process of creating our own rule of life. Step one, let grace build on nature. Assess who you are and what gives you joy. Step two, name that place of joy. Name your Garden of Gethsemane. Step three, what core values do you treasure? Solitude, community, peace, service. There are hundreds of these core values that you might name. Step four, where are you headed? What are your goals? I suggest using the RIM model, relationship with the Lord, identity in him, and your mission as a consequence of that relationship and identity. Now, step five, where do you live? What is your vocation? What is your circumstance? What are your responsibilities? Pray about all these questions. You might need to write down some of your observations. And now we are ready, finally, to nail down how concretely we're going to do something to remember, practicing and implementing all of this, writing that rule of life so that we can remember what we've discovered about ourselves and our relationship with God. But this is more than enough for this video. What I leave you with is the challenge of getting ready to craft your own rule of life. In the next video, we'll walk through actually writing a rule of life. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless you. Be well.